It's January 2026. You open your phone and Minneapolis looks like a movie set. Masked agents, rifles, sirens, and shouting. People keep repeating a bureaucratic name, Operation Metro Surge. But the clips feel personal. Doors, cuffs, crying neighbors, terrified kids. Then 2 American citizens die in separate encounters with ICE officers. 2 names become candles, posters, angry speeches, and hashtags overnight. Here's the twist. The argument doesn't stop at immigration raids. It collides with guns, America's loudest, oldest, most emotional constitutional fight. If you carry legally, are you safer or just a bigger target? If agents wear masks, how do you even verify authority? The White House says it's public safety, arresting criminals and restoring order. Critics say it's militarized policing aimed at vulnerable communities. Former presidents jump in. Congress threatens funding. Courts overflow. And a 27-word sentence from 1791 returns, like a ghost in daylight. So tonight, let's follow the chain. Raids to protests, protests to gunfights, and gunfights back to America's founding fears. ICE usually works quietly. Paperwork, warrants, detention vans. Metro Surge looked different. Big teams, visible gear, and sudden arrests across the metro. Reports described early morning sweeps through Minneapolis-St. Paul. Workplaces, apartments, even hotels. The point was speed, not conversation, not paperwork. The administration framed it as removing dangerous criminals. Supporters heard safety. Others heard collective punishment and intimidation instantly on day one. Scale creates friction. Hundreds detained, lawyers sprinting, families waiting outside buildings. In chaos, rumor spreads faster than facts every single hour. Judges complained ICE ignored court orders about access and processing. Government lawyers argued urgency. The courtroom became a second battlefield. If you've ever dealt with bureaucracy, you know the fear. You're one file number and nobody answers your calls for days. Minnesota's leaders said federal agents flooded the state. The White House said local officials should stop interfering with enforcement immediately. Then people noticed masks. Not Halloween masks. Tactical coverings. And when identity is hidden, accountability feels hidden too, right? Everywhere? On social media, a new question appeared. If someone grabs you, how do you confirm they're real agents, not criminals? That's when communities started filming everything. Windows, sidewalks, parking lots, rooftops. Cameras became the neighborhood's emergency oxygen, overnight for survival. But filming can be treated like provocation. Some bystanders were arrested for obstruction, even while just recording, according to critics. So the operation didn't just move bodies, it moved emotions. Fear for immigrants, anger at federal power, and anxiety about public order. And Minneapolis had recent memories of protests and policing. That history makes any new uniform feel heavier, more explosive, instantly. When trust is low, every siren sounds personal. You start reading intentions into footsteps and radio chatter, even if you're innocent. That's the pressure cooker. And inside it, 2 deaths happen, turning policy into grief and grief into politics overnight so fast. First, Renée Good. Ordinary day, ordinary street, then gunfire during a federal encounter. Her name spreads with stunned disbelief everywhere. Families asked basic questions. Who fired, why, and what warnings were given? Those details decide whether people mourn or rage. Then, Pretti, an ICU nurse. Locals describe him as calm and service-minded. Suddenly he's a headline, not a person. Video becomes the courtroom before any courtroom opens. People slow frames, zoom hands, replay angles, and argue seconds like prosecutors. Officials said agents feared for safety. Critics said the public story didn't match what viewers saw. That gap lights protests. At the White House, the press secretary said no one wants civilians dying, but defended enforcement and warned against interference. She also highlighted threats against officers, pointing to online intimidation cases. The message was, emotions can become crimes. Fast, online. A charged suspect was labeled a domestic terrorist at one briefing. That word hits like a hammer in a tense city. Meanwhile, Minnesota officials demanded transparency and a full investigation. They argued federal secrecy was poisoning public trust. Dangerously fast, statewide. In Pretti's case, federal authorities opened a civil rights probe. That signals the stakes could escalate beyond politics, into law soon. Now, add a strange detail. Talk about a gun. Some reports emphasized Pretti had a legal handgun. Others emphasized he wasn't handling it. Same fact, two moral stories. One says agents faced danger. The other says he was punished for exercising a right. That's when immigration debate collides with gun debate. Because in America, firearms are never just objects. They're identity, status, story. If you're a lawful carrier, you hear gun and feel accused. If you fear violence, you hear gun and feel endangered. In the streets, vigils turned into marches. In courts, motions turned into deadlines. Everywhere, trust kept leaking away, day after day. Have you noticed this pattern? When institutions feel distant, people cling to footage. Video becomes a replacement for faith, almost. But video can't answer everything. Intent, fear, split-second judgment, training, body language. That's why investigations matter and why delays enrage. At the same time, federal leaders insisted the mission continues. For supporters, that's resolve. For critics, that's arrogance, again, today. And that sets the stage for a bigger political collision. When ex-presidents speak and Congress reaches for the budget switch, Barack Obama wrote that Pretti's killing was a heartbreaking tragedy, and also a wake-up call that core national values are under assault. He said federal agents have a tough job, but Americans expect lawful, accountable enforcement that works with state and local officials. Then he dropped the knife. That's not what we're seeing in Minnesota. In fact, we're seeing the opposite, he wrote. Obama urged peaceful protest and accountability, not revenge. He framed the moment as civic duty. Keep watching, keep demanding answers. Bill Clinton's statement was sharper. He said horrible scenes unfolded. Masked agents seizing people, including children, from homes and streets. He claimed citizens observing and documenting police were arrested, beaten, tear-gassed, then said Renée Good and Alex Pretti were shot and killed. Clinton called it unacceptable, adding officials lied to us and told us not to believe our own eyes, while blocking local investigations. He warned, give away freedoms after 250 years and you may never get them back. That's a very specific kind of fear. And he ended with a slogan older than parties. We the people. It's a reminder that legitimacy comes from consent, not force. When two former presidents speak in 1 week, the temperature's high. But Congress controls the thermostat, money, and deadlines. Democratic leaders threatened to block DHS funding unless ICE reforms happened. Warrants, visible IDs, mask limits, stronger oversight, and audits. Republicans called that reckless, arguing crime and borders require strength. Each side claimed to defend the Constitution, ironically today, too. A shutdown threat wasn't abstract. People warned impacts on TSA, FEMA, and Coast Guard operations. Immigration politics can hit flights and storms. Meanwhile, court dockets swelled. Judges demanded compliance. Government attorneys looked overwhelmed. Procedure became the story, not just policy alone anymore. This is the hidden damage. Even if you support enforcement, chaos erodes legitimacy. And legitimacy is what keeps violence from spreading. So people ask for simple things. Clear uniforms, clear badges, clear body cam rules. Reduce confusion before it becomes bullets, please. But opponents warned, if you tie agents' hands, criminals win. They said transparency can become a tactical weakness too sometimes. That argument drifts toward guns again. Because when both sides fear losing control, everyone starts reaching for their strongest tool. And in America, the strongest tool is often the same. A firearm, a badge, and a claim of constitutional legitimacy. So now we need the origin story. Why guns and legitimacy are welded together here, legally and emotionally since the founding. In Pretti's case, talk of a legal handgun became a spark. For some, it explained fear. For others, it explained prejudice. Here's the trap. Carry a gun, agents tense up. Don't carry, and you feel helpless. Which risk would you pick? Self-defense law depends on perception. Who looks threatening? Who looks official? Who looks like a stranger in the dark, nearby? Now add masks. If identity is unclear, the self-defense instinct grows. But if everyone arms up, panic spreads fast too. Gun control advocates say the fix is fewer guns in public, tighter carry permits, more training, more accountability for force, always. Gun rights advocates reply, criminals ignore rules and rights aren't negotiable. They say the state must earn trust, not demand it. So the question becomes personal. Do you trust the government to protect you, or do you insist on protecting yourself? If you've lived through a robbery, you may say, "My gun saved me." If you've lost someone, you may say, "Guns killed them." That's why gun debates feel like identity wars. Facts matter, but feelings decide which facts you even accept. First, at all. And yet the Constitution isn't a feeling, it's law. So the fight moves to courts, especially the Supreme Court, again. If you want to know why today's gun rules feel unstable, you have to watch one Supreme Court word: test. The Second Amendment is short, but explosive. A well-regulated militia, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. In 1791, many Americans feared a standing army could become a tyrant's tool. Militia meant citizens as a counterweight, armed, but the wording leaves a crack. Is the right collective, tied to militia service, or individual, tied to personal self-defense? Different regions also had different fears: frontier attacks, slave revolts, and political rivals. Guns became a solution to many nightmares. That's why modern Americans argue past each other. They aren't just debating weapons, they're debating what they fear most inside. For decades, courts often treated the amendment as linked to organized militia. Then 20th century politics pushed individual right readings hard, nationwide. The turning point wasn't a revolution in muskets, it was a revolution in Supreme Court language, starting in the 2000s. Once courts say individual, every regulation must justify itself case by case in public court fights. That's today's chaos right now. So let's walk through the key cases, because these rulings decide whether your city can regulate carry, storage, and sales. And keep this in mind, the court doesn't just answer questions, it chooses the rules for answering future questions too. 2008, District of Columbia versus Heller. The court said the Second Amendment protects an individual right, focused on self-defense in the home. Heller also said limits can exist, like bans for felons, restrictions in sensitive places, and bans on dangerous and unusual weapons. 2010, McDonald versus Chicago. The court applied that right to states through the 14th Amendment, shrinking local wiggle room sharply. After Heller and McDonald, lower courts used a two-step approach: text and history first, then balancing with public safety interests later. That balancing used tiers of scrutiny, like intermediate scrutiny. Think of it as a judge asking, is the rule reasonable and effective? Gun rights groups hated that. They said judges were inventing policy from the bench, turning rights into negotiable privileges. Quietly again, gun control groups preferred it. They said public safety evidence should matter because modern guns in cities aren't 1791 villages anymore today. Then 2022 hits. NYSRPA versus Bruen. The court rejected interest balancing and demanded text, history, and tradition instead, nationwide. Immediately, Bruen struck New York's proper cause rule, saying ordinary law-abiding citizens can't be denied public carry for lack of special need. Here's Bruen's core test. If the Second Amendment's plain text covers conduct, the government must justify limits with historical analogs. Notice the burden shift. Once the conduct fits keep and bear, the government carries the heavy backpack of history in court. Bruen also warned, not all history is equal. The Second Amendment is 1791. The 14th is 1868. Timing becomes weaponized, so lawyers fight over which era matters more, founding or Reconstruction. That sounds nerdy, but it decides modern carry rules. Bruen used analogical reasoning. You don't need identical old laws, but you need similar purpose and similar burden on the right. That's tricky with new tech. Polymer pistols, high-capacity magazines, ghost guns, optics. History has gaps, and gaps invite cherry-picking, always. Bruen didn't ban sensitive places. It accepted them, but warned you can't label whole cities sensitive just because they're crowded. States reacted fast. They expanded sensitive place lists: subways, stadiums, hospitals, schools, bars. Gun rights groups sued, calling it backdoor defiance, immediately. Now, every new rule must come with a history brief. Judges suddenly act like historians, reading 19th century statutes at midnight. Critics say that's unfair. The historical record reflects exclusion: women, Black Americans, immigrants. So tradition can freeze injustice in place. Supporters reply, that's the point of a constitution. Rights don't depend on today's fears or headlines. They're fixed constraints always. If you feel whiplash, you're not alone. Bruen changed the rulebook, so old compromises suddenly look unconstitutional. Overnight, everywhere, now? Then, 2024's United States versus Rahimi added nuance. The court upheld disarming people under certain domestic violence restraining orders, temporarily, sometimes. Rahimi signals dangerousness matters, but it also emphasizes due process. The government can't just label you dangerous without procedure first, so the court is building a puzzle. Carry rights expand, but targeted disarmament may survive. The boundaries are being litigated now, and that's why Metro Surge meets the Second Amendment. In a tense street, everyone's legal status matters. Agent, citizen, gun, camera. Now let's isolate the flashpoints one by one, because each issue becomes its own court battle under Bruen's new framework. Flashpoint 1. AR-15 style rifles. Some call them modern muskets. Others call them battlefield weapons, leaked into suburbs, schools, malls. Under Heller, common use matters. AR-15s are popular, so courts ask whether bans target common tools or unusual dangers instead. Flashpoint 2. Magazine capacity. Is a 30-round magazine a safety hazard or a lawful accessory for worst-case self-defense scenarios, really? Flashpoint 3. Ghost guns. Kits and 3D printing blur. Manufacture. Regulators chase serial numbers, makers chase privacy and speed. Online. Flashpoint 4. Sensitive places. Bruen allows them, but how far? Subways, parks, election sites? Courts now draw that map, slowly. Flashpoint 5. Red flag laws. Families can petition courts to temporarily remove guns from someone in crisis. Supporters say prevention, critics say abuse. Flashpoint 6. Permits and training. Some states require classes, fingerprints, and renewals. Others say that's a tax on a right. Flashpoint 7. Universal background checks. Supporters say close the private sale loophole at gun shows and online. Opponents fear registries and delays. Flashpoint 8. Safe storage rules. Are locked guns responsible, or do locks cost precious seconds when someone breaks your door at night? Flashpoint 9. Age limits. If you can vote at 18, can you buy a semi-automatic rifle? Courts weigh adulthood against risk. Flashpoint 10. Domestic violence disarmament after Rahimi. Which orders qualify, what proof is required, and how fast can rights return legally? Notice the pattern. Each rule becomes a history trial. Meanwhile, the street stays real. Agents, civilians, guns, cameras, fear, tonight. So Metro Surge isn't only about immigration, it's about legitimacy under stress. Who may use force, who may resist, and who decides truth. If you were on that street hearing boots and sirens, what would you trust? A badge, a camera, a neighbor, or your gun? Bruen tells courts to look backward, but communities live forward. The hard part is building rules that reduce fear on both sides. After hearing the story today, what do you think? Where is the line between safety and freedom? Today's story ends here.